Good afternoon, parents, family members, friends, and distinguished guests. It is my distinct honor and great joy to present to you the Masters of Business Administration graduating class of 2026 from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. It is now my distinct honor to present the Dean, distinguished faculty, dedicated administrators, and esteemed alumni of the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania.
You may be seated. Good afternoon, graduates. It's hard to imagine a better place to be than right here, right now, celebrating the Wharton MBA Class of 2026. Before I do anything else, let me welcome the parents, partners, families, friends, and loved ones who traveled to Philadelphia to share in this proud day. Your unwavering support has been instrumental to your students' success. Students, please give your families a round of applause. So today is also a celebration of all of the ways in which you have helped your graduates cross this stage. I also want to welcome my Wharton faculty and staff colleagues. You are the reason our students' educational experience is possible, and your guidance and dedication to their success shows up in every one of the graduates sitting before you. On their behalf, thank you. And lastly, a huge welcome to each and every one of you, the Wharton MBA Class of 2026. When you started on this journey 2 years ago, I challenged you at your convocation ceremony to move through your experience at Wharton with accountability and intentionality. To think not just about what you would do here, but to consider what it would mean to be a member of this community. I told you the world looks to Wharton graduates for advice, for leadership, and for solutions to big, complicated problems, and that your Wharton education would shape not only your own future, but the future of others. And now, 2 years later, you are on the cusp of another monumental transition, Which brings me to what I'd like to focus on today. As graduates of the first, and I think you will agree with me when I say the best collegiate business school in the world, you've built the skills to make an immediate impact wherever you go. But let's be honest, you're also stepping into a world that feels a little complicated. Every day, we're reading conflicting headlines pulling us in different directions. We're bombarded with discussions about the risks and rewards of generative AI and the tensions of our ultra-connected community. In the time you have been at Wharton, you have witnessed companies and industries rising and falling in real time. It's a lot. But it means that leadership today requires a fundamentally different set of capabilities than what we've typically asked of our leaders. Yes, you've spent your days mastering how to think analytically, how to apply data to solve problems, and how to see multiple sides of an issue. Those skills will always matter. But in today's world, they're simply not enough. So before you start your next journey, let me offer you one last framework to guide you through the new demands of leadership. I know, one more framework, but I think you can handle it. Some of you may know that my academic expertise is in crisis leadership, and I've spent decades studying how people navigate volatile environments. So trust me when I say, while history has never been short on challenges, the speed and scale of change today will test not just what you know, but how you respond. So I've been asking myself lately, what do leaders actually need to succeed in today's environment? And I keep coming back to 4 distinct pillars of strength: relational strength, intellectual strength, physical strength, and emotional strength. Okay, now time for a little call and response. Say it with me. Relational strength, intellectual strength, physical strength, and emotional strength. Okay, I need you to remember those because there will be a test at the end. All right, so let's start with intellectual strength, because that's probably what brought you to Wharton in the first place. Intellectual strength is your capacity to think strategically, to process information, and to make sound decisions in uncertain situations. Intellectual strength is essential in today's world, but it's also mere table stakes. You can't lead without it, but you also cannot rely on intellectual strength alone. So what else do you need? Relational strength. This is your ability to understand people and ultimately being able to inspire them. Today's leaders must navigate a complicated maze of stakeholders, including clients, customers, employees, board members, investors, regulators, you name it. Each one sees the world through a different lens and has their own priorities. On top of that, there are more ways than ever for people to respond to and challenge what you say, creating a potential cycle of backlash and response. This cacophony of voices means that you are not the sole author of your or your company's narrative. So you have to listen deeply to the feedback you receive from others, even when that feedback is uncomfortable to hear. Because you won't be able to inspire people to act if you don't take the time to understand where they're coming from. Next is physical strength. Now, I don't mean you need to become a bodybuilder to be a good leader, but leadership does require physical fortitude. You will face sustained immense pressure for long stretches of time where the stakes are high and the demands don't let up. You've heard that leaders need to be resilient, that they should be able to get knocked down, bounce back, and keep on going. That matters, but it's reactive. So in addition to resilience, today's leaders need stamina. Unlike resilience, stamina is proactive. It is built over time from purposeful, repeated exposure to the stressors of today's environment. Stamina is what allows you to recover from challenges and to stay steady through them. So as a leader, I urge you to train your mind and your body to withstand the pressures that produce exhaustion and burnout. I promise you, doing so will reveal what you are truly capable of. And finally, there's emotional strength. If physical strength measures how you handle pressure, emotional strength helps you keep your cool when challenges arise, but also when opportunity comes knocking. Within emotional strength, there's one quality I want to highlight: patience. I know I'm talking to a group of Wharton graduates, perhaps the most ambitious people on the planet. So to you, patience is probably a four-letter word. But I've learned from my own experience in higher education that patience is crucial. You can have all the intelligence, all the relationships, and all the physical stamina you need to excel, and still find your plans disrupted by something completely out of your control. A leadership change, an unexpected revenue shortfall, a scandal in your firm or industry, or even a global pandemic. In those moments, the hardest thing you may have to do is set your own plans aside and wait. This may feel counterintuitive, especially in a world where most of your wants and needs are a swipe or a click away, because you, and especially you Wharton grads, are hardwired for positive momentum. But the arc of your career will be long and won't always move up and to the right. Prepare yourself now for life's inevitable twists and turns by getting comfortable with the idea of being patient. And I can tell you from experience, patience is far more powerful than it looks. A quick personal story. I accepted the role of dean at the Wharton School in February of 2020, just before the pandemic changed everything. The selection process leading up to who would be announced as the next dean of the school lasted for months. But through it all, and at the risk of being a little presumptuous, I began to visualize myself in the role. I was creating plans and building a vision of what I wanted to do in my first 90 days. But by the time I actually started in the job, a few months later, the impact of the pandemic was in full effect. Now there were more urgent priorities than the agenda that I had planned. So I had to be patient and put my plans on hold to respond to the immediate needs of the Wharton community. This didn't mean I had to give up on my ambitions for the school. I just had to give it more time to bring them to life. And that's what patience really is. It's not inaction. It is a long-term investment in what you're building. Not now is not the same as not ever. So, now's the time for your final test. I told you there would be a test. Hopefully it's an easy one. I want you to turn to the person sitting next to you and recite to them the 4 pillars. Ready, set, go. Okay. Raise your hand if the person sitting next to you got all 4 of them right. I don't see every hand raised. Okay, relational, intellectual, physical, and emotional. When you put them together, you get the acronym RIPE. A gentle reminder that becoming ready to lead takes time. As a graduate of the Wharton School, you have just made a tremendous investment in your intellectual strength. And though term papers and exams may be behind you, learning should not be. My hope is that your most impactful leadership journey still lies ahead. And my advice is simple: don't rush it. See patience not as a punishment or a dream deferred, but rather view it as an advantage, as the time and space to continue building the relational, the intellectual, the physical, and the emotional strength that you will need to define the kind of leader that you become. Because when you take the time to develop and grow in all four dimensions, you will be ripe for any opportunity that comes your way. So on behalf of everyone at the Wharton School, congratulations to the class of 2026! Now it is my distinct pleasure to introduce your graduation day speaker, David Solomon. David, as you know, is chairman of the board of directors and CEO of Goldman Sachs. He first joined Goldman in 1999 as a partner and served in several leadership roles throughout his career, including as the firm's president and chief operating officer, co-head of the investment banking division, and global head of the financing group. David's steadfast leadership, deep industry expertise, and focus on workplace culture have positioned Goldman to lead in a rapidly evolving economic and technological landscape. David is chairman of the Board of Trustees of Hamilton College and serves on the boards of the Robin Hood Foundation, New York Presbyterian Hospital, the Paley Center for Media, and the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Foundation. We are incredibly fortunate to have him here with us today. Please join me in welcoming your speaker, David Solomon.
Thank you all very much. This is a better crowd than Lollapalooza. I used to tell my friends that someday I'd be on the court at the Cathedral of College basketball. I never expected it would be as a 64-year-old bank executive. But here we are. Dean James, thank you for asking me to be here today. It is a great honor, and I too want to start by saying congratulations to the Wharton MBA Class of 2026. I have had the great pleasure of working with hundreds of Wharton alums at Goldman Sachs. When I ask what makes this place special, I often hear about the rigors of the classroom, the devotion of the faculty, or the global reach of the alumni network. One alum said, "It's like the best dinner party you've ever been to. It lasts 2 years." But one theme is constant. This is a group of people that strives for excellence. This is a value I hold deeply, striving for excellence, though admittedly, it looked very different when I was your age. Let me paint you a picture. Today, if you want to compare a stock price's performance to its peers, you say 10 words into your phone and it spits out the result faster than you can get a drink at Bonner's. But when I was starting out, back in the prehistoric days of the 1980s, I had to go to the library, pull old issues of the Wall Street Journal, write down the historical stock prices while brushing back my long flowing hair, plot them on a piece of graph paper, and then take a picture of it on a Xerox machine. The whole process took about 6 hours. Then I would go to my client and I would say, here's how your stock traded versus these 5 competitors over the last 5 years. They would look at me and say, thank you so much. I've never seen such brilliance. The world is very different now. But the way I see it, today is the best day in the history of the world to be in your shoes, and tomorrow will be even better. That does not mean perfect, but as the world evolves, technology empowers people in ways generations before us couldn't dream of. It is exciting. The opportunity in front of you is enormous. But I'm here today to remind you that it is up to each and every one of you to capture it. Over my 42-year career, I've found there are certain core values that transcend shifts in technology and culture. And if you work at them, they'll not only help you strive for excellence and capture opportunity, they will give you a better chance of looking back when you're older, like me, and being satisfied with how you've spent your time. The first one I had to learn the hard way. I was in my 30s, working at Bear Stearns, and I had a deal go south in what felt like a spectacular failure. I went storming into the office of my mentor, Richie Metrick, and I was extremely emotional. He looked at me all bent out of shape, my arms were waving, and he said, "Would you like to have a conversation about this?" I shouted back at him, "Yes!" He said, "Then why don't you go back out there, calm down, and try that again." So I literally walked back out of his office, took a deep breath, and walked back in with a much more balanced and constructive approach. We talked for an hour, which brings me to my first value, growth. Embrace criticism. Be open to change. It is a wonderful life skill to examine our faults and then adapt. One of the things that has helped me enormously is finding mentors I trust and then trusting them when they tell me I can do better. I learned a lot about this from my dad, who was a leading expert in what I could do better. When I was in high school, I once complained to him that I didn't have enough money to do the things I wanted to do. His response? Get another job. I told him I can't. I had essays to write, I played 3 sports, I scooped 31 flavors of ice cream at Baskin-Robbins. So he told me to take out a calendar and write down everything I did each day. And I noticed, when I had to account for every minute, that I actually wasted a reasonable amount of time. 3 weeks later, with a bit more intentionality in my schedule, I was working a second job, flipping burgers at McDonald's. My father had a great way of never telling me what to do, but always showing me a different way of looking at things. So find strong mentors, embrace criticism, and be open to change. The second value is commitment. Show up. More than a little success comes from knowing what matters to you and who matters to you, and then showing up over and over again. When I was 7 years into my career, an impressive entrepreneur was planning to shake up the casino business in Las Vegas, and I wanted to help him raise money to finance his aspirations. One day, we invited him for lunch at Bear Stearns, and he arrived 2 hours late for the meeting, just after the executive dining room had closed. We had ordered sandwiches, but he felt slighted that he wasn't important enough to be served a hot lunch. He left in a huff. I was only a 29-year-old investment banker, but I was determined to secure him as a client. So every 3 to 4 weeks, for several years, I flew up to Boston to have lunch with him. Always in his office, always served hot. And slowly but surely, we built a trusting relationship. 7 years later, he decided to raise over $1 billion to finance the development of his flagship property in Las Vegas. At long last, he called me to say, "I want you to help me with the financing." But there was a catch. He wanted me to work with the Goldman Sachs. Now, in retrospect, perhaps it was prudent of him not to put all his eggs in the Bear Stearns basket. But I took it personally. I had spent 7 years cultivating this opportunity, and now I had to share it with someone else. I swallowed my pride. My counterpart at Goldman Sachs, John Winklereid, and I ended up working incredibly well together. And then on the flight back from the closing dinner, John turned to me and said, "So, would you ever think about coming to work at Goldman Sachs?" It was then that I realized I could finally quit my job at Baskin-Robbins. As you progress in your career, your priorities will shift and expand. Choose to show up when it matters, both in business and in your personal life. My daughters were 5 and 7 when they decided they wanted a magician for their birthday parties. Now, my dad used to teach me magic tricks when I was growing up. And because I hated drinking milk, my mom used to watch me make it disappear into a cornucopia of newspaper so I didn't have to drink it. But fast forward to age 35, my magic was rusty. So I practiced for months. For example, you know those metal rings that magicians play with that magically link together and pull apart? It's a sleight of hand trick, and it takes some practice. I'd be holed up in my office at home, doors closed, and my daughters would hear loud clanks down the hallway as I tried to get the motions right, followed by inappropriate curse words that they really shouldn't repeat. Were they the best magic shows? No. Did I wear a tuxedo and have perfectly curated stories for each trick? Yes. Do my daughters still tell stories about this more than 25 years later? Absolutely. Know what matters to you and show up. Which brings me to the third value, connection. Invest in people and relationships. The truth is, you guys don't have to look hard to find smart, funny, interesting people in your life. You're graduating with over 800 of them. As you go back into your careers all over the world, try hard to stay connected. There have been various times in my career when every week I picked up the phone and tried to call 3 to 5 people. No agenda, just, hey, I'm thinking about you. How are you? Especially if they were in a challenging moment. I didn't think much of it at the time, but years later, people started telling me how meaningful it was to them. And in more than a few cases, it deepened our relationship. The telephone is one of the most underrated technologies in the world. A phone call to someone is 10 times more effective than a text or an email. My daughter says that's an unverified statistic, but I know it's true. Or now, and I'm really dating myself with this, a handwritten thank you note. Even if, like me, your handwriting is terrible. People are touched by them. I know I am. In my office, I keep an entire drawer full of notes that people have written to me, thanking me for something that was meaningful to them. I've had an interesting career, but one of the most rewarding things has been playing a small role in other people's success along the way. No matter what path you choose, invest in relationships. It will help you succeed. It will make your journey more fulfilling. But to keep yourself going through the long journey ahead of you, you need a fourth and last value I want to talk about, and that's passion. Cultivate what fuels you and don't let it go. It's important to choose a profession you're passionate about. I did. I love finance, and I love the career journey I've been on. But it is also important and necessary, I think, to have passions away from your work. It was July 2017 when my own passion came under scrutiny, and I felt serious pressure to give it up. 6 months earlier, I had become the president of Goldman Sachs, and my visibility had increased. That day in July, the New York Times headline read, "At Goldman, he's David Solomon. At the club, he's DJ D. Sol." I have always had a passion for music. In college, I was officially the social chair of my fraternity. And unofficially, I was the guy who made the mixtapes for parties. And we had a few. I'd transfer songs one by one from LP record to cassette, finding exactly the right order to bring down the house. At our annual Christmas party, it was Bruce Springsteen's Santa Claus is Coming to Town, straight into Start Me Up by the Rolling Stones, always finishing with Echo Beach by Martha and the Muffins. Grads, try and play in that sequence to your parents. You'll see a side of them you've never seen before. I want to pause there just for a second, off script. I went last night to see Bruce Springsteen at Madison Square Garden. He is 76 years old, and he can still rock. And he is in Philadelphia on May 30th. If you happen to be here, you should definitely go see him. Through the years, while I've worked hard on a career, I've never stopped loving music. I was the guy at any event with a computer, multiple playlists, and an aux cord. Thank God they invented the iPhone and I don't have to lug my computer around anymore. So when that article came out, I had been DJing on the side for a number of years. All sorts of people came to me saying, you have to stop DJing if you want to be the CEO of Goldman Sachs. Ultimately, I decided I enjoyed DJing too much to give it up, and it's something I still do today, although a little bit less visibly. It enriches my life, and it's kept me grounded in turbulent times. And besides, and many of you know this, nothing is more exciting than a damn good drop at 130 beats per minute. I also never thought my list of personal references would include Hank Paulson, Lloyd Blankfein, the Chainsmokers, Kygo, and Tiesto. There's something you do, each and every one of you, that gives you excitement and joy. Don't let it fall by the wayside. You have a long journey in front of you, full of setbacks and tough days. It will be a lot easier to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, if you stay connected to what it is that lights you up. This is an exciting moment. You're entering the workforce at a time when technology is once again reshaping our everyday lives. After all, we live in an age of self-driving cars, reusable rockets, and an app called Suno, which some of you might be familiar with. It's an AI app that helps you produce music instantaneously. As I was preparing for this, I gave it a prompt, and here's what I said. Hey Suno, I'm at Wharton's graduation, and I'd like you to make an anthem for the MBA class of 2026. Let's create an upbeat house song, approximately 120 beats a minute, that talks about why Wharton's grads should be optimistic about what's in front of them in the years ahead, and how today is the best day in the history of the world to be in their shoes, and tomorrow will be better. Here's what Suno came up with.
We showed up bold, case by case, but our hearts stayed gold. From Huntsman Hall to the dawn-lit floor, we learned how to build and then build more. You brought the fire, I brought the drive. Now look at us, we're fully alive. Hands up high, let it come. New world calling, here it comes. Every risk got us this far. Now we know just who we are.
That comes with 2 more verses and 3 more choruses. It's not out publicly yet. That took 10 seconds to create. That's not the future. That's right now. This is the world you are entering. And as you do, be open to change. Show up when it matters. Invest in your relationships. Cultivate your passions. Because today is the best day in the history of the world to be in your shoes, and the opportunity in front of you is enormous. It is yours to capture. To the Wharton MBA Class of 2026, I look forward to seeing what you will all do next, but whatever you do, I urge you to always strive for excellence. Never settle for anything less. Thank you and congratulations.
David, I think the only thing better than that song would have been seeing some of your moves up here on the dance floor. Thank you for your motivational advice to our graduates. It is now my exciting opportunity to introduce our next speaker, Class of 2026 graduate, Azeeza Hasan. Azeeza is a Wharton MBA candidate in the class of 2026, where she is majoring in marketing and operations management. During her time at Wharton, she has been deeply involved in leadership and community building as a McNulty Leadership Fellow, co-president of Wharton Muslims in Business, and a captain in the Wharton Hockey League. Prior to Wharton, Azeeza earned a degree in applied mathematics from Brown University and began her career at Deloitte in Chicago, where she worked at the intersection of analytics, strategy, and operations. Following graduation, she will join Amazon as a product manager in her hometown of Northern Virginia. She reflects on her Wharton experience with deep appreciation for growth, friendships, and community that she found along the way. Please join me in welcoming Azeeza Hasan to the stage.
Thanks for the opening set, Mr. Solomon. Good afternoon, Dean James, esteemed faculty and staff, honorable families and friends, and, of course, the brilliant class of 2026. I am humbled and privileged to be standing here today. Thank you to God, first and foremost, my parents, Asghar and Zahra, my three sisters and their families, my grandparents, my in-laws, and my husband, Akil, for cosplaying as a Wharton student this entire time. Classmates, take a look around you and join me in thanking your own families and friends. Class of 2026, I have one last class participation assignment for you. Raise your hand if in the last 2 years you started a new sport and made it your personality, hiked up or skied down a mountain, and lastly, have typed in a group chat the letters ISO. Pretty much all of us. For those unfamiliar, a quick lesson on Wharton terminology. The second an event, like Follies, dance studio, storytellers, is sold out, the free market, our 1,000 person WhatsApp, buzzes with ISO, short for in search of. For example, in the last couple days, texts would read ISO hotel room for parents, or ISO air mattress for parents, depending on what kind of child you have. ISO graduation tassel, ISO a restaurant reservation for literally anywhere tonight. As a Wharton MBA, I have spent 2 years chronically and compulsively in search of, and I have some thoughts on what to search for next. Within and beyond Huntsman, we were in search of the optimal Wharton MBA experience. At preterm, on a random golf course in Delaware, we were in search of our distinct leadership styles. Through global experiences, we were in search of physical, mental, and intellectual pushes that stretched our perceived limits. In the classroom, we were in search of experiential learning to take us from our previous illustrious jobs of consulting and banking to our bigger and better jobs of consulting and banking. We do love banking, Mr. Solomon. Today, the search doesn't stop. The group chat doesn't go quiet. It just changes channels. Will be ISO a promotion, a house, a spouse? ISO is not just a Wharton behavior. It is a life posture. And yet, among the lavish trips, ostentatious galas, and midnight hockey, I've missed the moments that aren't defined by rigid deadlines, urgent pings, or stands full of cheers. I've missed the friendly face that wasn't in my overt network. I've missed showing up when it costs me something and benefits me nothing. I have learned that we must expand our search to authentically human encounters because that is how we will be remembered. Searching solely for the big ticket items overshadows the unassuming yet defining human interactions. The Quran reminds us, you may be provided for from where you do not expect. It was the day of the MIB Ramadan banquet. MIB, to clarify, is the Muslims in Business Club, not Men in Black. The event was sold out. Some people started ISOing tickets. I was locked in on marketing, execution, decor, food, and I stormed through Huntsman and almost walked straight past Pete. You all know Pete Pascarella, the man who sits at the security desk at Huntsman, who's watched us speed walk through the doors at 8:27 a.m. with dark circles from either being punched in fight night or just low on sleep. I asked Pete, are you free for the event tonight? He couldn't take the SEPTA back to South Philly that late, so I offered to call him an Uber. He resisted, saying, no way, that's $40 you can spend on something better. On the quest to plan a large-scale, fancy event, I forgot about the people who weren't in the group chat. That's what I didn't search for. So whether you're minutes away from being a Wharton alum, or are a loving family member or friend, or at the security desk at the Palestra, we all have the obligation to expand our search. In true Wharton fashion, I have an action item for a refined ISO. Think back and ask why. My 3-year-old nephew Akbar does it relentlessly. Why was I too busy to notice? Why didn't I call? Why didn't I slow down? If our goals are to be on an arbitrary leaderboard, we risk gamifying life instead of living it. Class of 2026, we already led a fundraiser for Pete to go to the Eagles opener. We pooled together for classmates displaced by the 1 a.m. fire at 1919 Market. We showed up when it counted. Let's not overlook these opportunities to lift as we climb corporate ladders, more mountains, and hopefully net worth brackets. I hope we all remain ISO. As graduates of the best business school, we're now ready to search beyond. Thank you and congratulations.
would like now to turn the program over to Nikolai Sigurko, the David M. Knott Professor of Management, co-director of the Mack Institute for Innovation and Management, and Vice Dean of the MBA program at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. Nikolai is an inspiring educator, an award-winning researcher, and a valued friend and partner. Please join me in welcoming Vice Dean Sigurko.
Well, congratulations, class of 2026. You've made it. I remember it was a mere 22 months ago that I welcomed you in the building just across the road to the beginning of your Wharton journey. I hope that we have accomplished our goal, that today you look at the world with somewhat different eyes. You see connections where you didn't see them before, and you have made connections in this wonderful community. Now, since the Dean is looking forward to shaking the hands of 851 graduates, and I'm looking forward to handing out 851 certificates, let me be relatively brief and just focus quickly on 3 topics. First, celebrate. Getting a Wharton MBA is a major achievement, and you should be proud of yourself. Juggling academics with a job search while building a social and professional network is not easy. This was a 2-year marathon with many team meetings, midterms and finals, group projects, individual papers, late night studying, and you persevered. Now, as with many celebrations of a big and completed task, there's probably both, right? The exhilaration of having finished it and a tinge of sadness that now it's over. The German saying of this feeling is, with a laughing and a crying eye. But if you feel a bit sad, that's probably also a good sign that you had a really good time. The second topic, and you have already heard this from other speakers, but let me re-emphasize it: gratitude. Be grateful to all the people who have made it possible for you to be here in this moment. This includes the obvious ones, many of which sit right now in the stands: your parents, your partners, your friends, and obviously your classmates sitting around you. But also think about your mentors, your co-workers, your elementary school or maybe high school teachers, the people who guided you towards applying to Wharton, your professors, and many, many alumni who have come before you and who have supported the school over the years so that we can continue to be the best business school in the world. Let's be grateful. Yes, of course, you worked hard and you persevered, but without all of them, you probably would not be here today. So please reach out to those who have helped you along the way and thank them. My last topic, impact. We have articulated, and here I quote, that the goal of the Wharton MBA program is to equip and enable our students to occupy influential positions in organizations as conscientious, globally aware, and effective leaders who create a significant impact in the world. So now that you have this great degree, now that you're part of this amazing alumni community, now that you have the tools, from financial acumen to strategic thinking, you have also the responsibility to utilize your new powers to create a positive impact in this world. Students of mine know that I like to harp on the topic of value. My plea to you is that whenever you engage in an action in the future, please ask yourself, does this action create value? Does it increase the size of the pie? Or does this action merely shift value, moving a slice of the pie from one pocket to another pocket? Please remember, your decisions have ripple effects. They may affect your customers, your suppliers, your co-workers, and the communities in which you operate. So please, think about value at the system level. Now let me conclude with one of my favorite sayings. Success is when smart planning, hard work, and good luck meet opportunity. Wharton hopefully provided you with the tools to do the smart planning. I know that you all can work really hard, so all I'm left with is wishing you all the good luck to meet that opportunity to go out there and be successful and create a lot of value. All the best to the class of 2026. It is now my great pleasure to announce the Palmer Scholars for the class of 2026. These students consistently performed at the highest level with an academic performance that placed them in the top 5% of the class. Please join me in congratulating these students on their outstanding achievement. I would ask each of the scholars to rise and remain standing when I call their names. Jenna Abele. Namya Agarwal, Brian Ayers, Steve Berkowitz, Brendan Justin Blau, Ari Brathwaite, Alexander Bird, Orion Kappard, Andrew Carton, Xingfang Chai, Madison Cook, Nohan Crawford, Alexandra Ding, Christopher Esposito, Sam Greenberg, Garish Gwalani, Harry Hahn, Caitlin Ho, Michelle Hu, Irina Wang, Matthew Jones, Anushka Kannan, Mark Kim, Harrison King, Harry Kong, Randall Crass, Jawan Amanda Lee, Soumya Malhotra, Nicholas Masood, Anthony Mrad, Rahul Nair, Jasper Pruvo, Vijay Ramanujan, Vineeth Ravi, Duncan James Benson Robertson, Carl Salame, Nitin Sethi, Willa Sun, Billy Teitelbaum, Elizabeth Thoren, Keneal Van Nostrand, Aaron Varner, Rihan Bij, Shirley Wang, Abigail Wax, Lucy Amran Ziao, Andrew Shui, and Rowena Zhang. Congratulations to our Palmer Scholars of the class of 2026. All right, you may be seated again. Each year, academic departments and the second-year class also recognize students who have excelled in the classroom and those who have made a big impact on the community during their 2 years here at Wharton. Now I please call your attention to the screens above as we honor the recipients of these awards for the class of 2026. Our student award winners, please stand so that we can also recognize for your accomplishments. Everyone who just saw their name, please stand up. There we go. Thank you so much. Congratulations. All right, now we finally get to the point what you all been waiting for. The MBA class of 2026. The time has come for you to be recognized as graduates of the oldest, and may I say, best business school in the world.
Azeeza Hasan. Anaholapo Odunjo. Michelle Rusnak. Sid Chopra. Ghassan Sugaib. Satwik Bansal. Shruti Manglik. Mitchell Moose. Tosa Nihikwera. Amanda Ajapong. Pranaya Anshu. Abigail Wemboye. Artur Barkan. Ben Barnett. Geely Becker. Christina Bermudez. Andrew Jacob George Blocker. Katerina Bonmassar. AJ Boskert. David Bromberg Slazenger. Alejandro Carrillo Alvarez Calderon. Lily Chadwick. Victoria Chow. Anisa Habiba Shaibi. Ijun Chen. Akil Chadajalu. Kyle D'Souza. Ria Dave. Arden Demiriak. Joshua Ecker. Blessing Eddie DeYoung Edom. John Franklin. Abhishek Goyal. Chloe Gulate. Stephanie Gutierrez. Rishav Jain. Megan Ostina Jasudas. Chungye Zhang. Rohan Krishna. Alexander Kern. Stanton Levitt. Patrick Lobel. Angela Malinovich. Claire Malkin. Henry Matilla. Jasmine Maloney. Matthew McPoyle. Max Meyer. Matt Keepman. Tim Miao. Stuti Modi. Aishani Naga. Katie Mirola. Ida Ozuner. Robert Joseph Kroner. Brendan Smith. John Paquette. Thomas Peacher. Spencer Nosralla. Brianna Gurl. Sarah Quetawala. Maria Jose Ramirez Freira. Haley Raphael. Harrison Rubin. Ali Suhai. Carolyn Shum. Kamya Shankarana Rayanan. Kuhu Singh. Kitiri Suresh. Garrett Schaus. Delisha Tana. Loic Chebachu. Sam Tadori. Trisha Thacker. Rebecca Thorpe. Praneeth Thota. Gunnar Tucker. Elaine Vernoff. Raul Vijay Vergia. Doris Wong. Jay Weiss. Wanyu Zhang. Kenton McNeil. Ayiram Jowan A.C. Adijay. Sonia Alb. Pedro Alvim. Luisa G. Baez Vientos. Anjali Bajaj. Brandon Justin Blau. Wayne Boo. Winston Bachnight. Kennedy Danielle Boyd. Bridget Kathleen Bruno. Orion Caphart. Andrew Carton. Vikram Chari. Alan Chen. Madison Kelly Chen. Paul Alexander Dederick. Hinda Chakati. Ali Elliott. Sean Gilbert. Greg Giordano. Terrell Golden Estime. Matthew Goodman. Vincent Goulardi. Apurva Gupta. Christina Gurusayaga Mier A. Tehran. Harry Hahn. Justin Hill. Irina Huang. Soraya Iyer. Pawin Kaupanichanan. Suji Kim. Harrison King. Russell Landis. Galen Lee. Sean Heath Lerner. Emily Lee. Shani Luo. Amanda Macaluso. Yusuf Malik. Hayden Manso. Selena Matsumura Flores. Camila Mendez Otero. Sasha Millais. Juwan Min. Christian James O'Connor. Islam Osman. Dabila Watara. Matthew Paragas. Prem Patel. Samantha Pecan. Alessandra Palicha. Nikki Perry. Long Pham. Polina Horotsky. Christo Ritter. Parker Saltzman. Arita Sandoval. Matthew Seck. Mahima Singh. Shivani Singh. Jake Sokol. Michael Steedman. Elizabeth Tang. Dionysius Theodore. Krishna Budera. Ujali Verma. Nihar Pretan Vete. James Lorenzo Walker. Naomi Weiner. Keenan Witskin. Chi Wo. Angela Yao. Matthew Yong. Nati Bulcho. Adam Ahmed. Leka Alaparthi. Georgia Banov. Deepan Biswas. Victoria Bonig. Juan Jose Bueno Ora. Abi Chada. Betty Chen. Michelle Chen. Jose Eduardo Coloma. Yana Economos. Alec Escamilla. Sophie Fink. Mohammed Flefel. Shrishti Goyal. Kira Guo. Caitlin Ho. Raylene Hu. John Huang. Kenny Igarza. Muini Itao. George Iverson. Katrina Jenkins. Aditi Combly. Rachel Katz. Max Keith. Do-Yup Kim. Tyler Knox. Tatum Lee. Brendan Lorton. Han Luo. Camilo Mesanave. Nicholas Masood. Samuel McDaniel. Kenny Meyer. Francie Middleton. Mana Mashuka. Stephen Murphy. Rahul Nair. Lindsay Nandochi. Jack O'Donnell. Bhumika Oja. Grace Orr. Brian Fan. Sean Piles. Shyam Karthik Ravikumar. Jerry Wren. Isa Romeo. Colin Sandor. Kate Schnitzer. Hajra Shamshi. Sabrina Sidhu. Atreya Sinha. Haoju Sun. Will Tabor. Sophia Vega. Paula Takahashi Benitez. Alexander Tyner. Aditya Vora. Rohan Soor. Lizzie Weissman. Alice Yu. Tiffany Yuan. Jay Zhao.
Alexandra Ding, Willa Sun, Gray Wan, Rebecca Abara Azubuike, Gina Abele, Nishant Goel Agrawal, Toluwanimi Alamu, Mugda Arora, Ziv Barak, Colton Becker, Michael Patrick Carr, Jr., Lee Carson, Layal Shalfun, Erika Chapman Ajoku, Isabella Louise Coleman, Henry Cutting, Abiraj Dillon, Pablo Espinoza, Cleo Fan, Rachel Draper, Sharon Shu, Nizar Gandhi, Daniel Mayer, Jose Martinez, Dan Lynch, Sweeta Mariseti, Son Ong Lee, Dominic John Labelle, Reshmi Kotla, Harry Kong, Eva Gabriela Hudek Koplau, Parit Kirati Yotin, Raul Karthik, Samuel Chongchul Zhou, Lin Dorian Zhang, Tim Sia, John Kim, William Phil Herbert IV, Alex Hedge, Anika Limai, Lindy Guo, Danny Goodman, Lucy Anran Zhao, Andrew Zhu, Anushka Kanan, Jimmy O'Riordan, Conrad Oberbeck, Sabrina Wenworth Odierno, Nkeruka Okorori, Natsumi Ono, Anthony Orr, Jackson Ozello, Nicholas Pena, Pam Pothe, Rishika Ranka, Daniel Rodriguez, Bridget Sabag, Spencer Savitz, Nitin Sethi, Aditi Sharma, Saloni Sengal, Nate Summerfield, Jacob Stein, Karan Takar, Emma Yaz, Ada Zhang, Rowena Zhang, Itai Sidvar, Alberto Zozeri, Vashuda Arlalka, Tanya Agrawal, Daniel Harrison Albert, Vrinda Batra, Sana Bawa, Lily Blackshaw, Leah Bauer Bozzone, Alejandra Diaz Castro, Vinita Chowdhury, Jessica Chow, James N.T. Kobina, Nia Coleman, Carly Douglas, Maximilian Drescher, Simin Feng, Alexia Fieger, John Foster, Lena Shah Gandevia, Zachary Garberman, Alicia Getter, Sam Greenberg, Dr. Alexia Hernandez, Michelle Hu, Mency Jane, Preston Jameson, Nitish Jindal, Lamar Johnson Harris, Alexis Jones, Lila Lee Jones, Danielle Caneff, Bobby Keating, Gary Kim, Jacob Koken, Randall Kraft, Rachel McCowley, Mohan Malhotra, Sami Markowitz, Alex Mead, Frank Mork, Bailey Nash, Nicholas Pham, Ravi Anil Patel, Max Portwood, Chris Powers, Akash Shri Raman, José André Rivero Ananu. Nicholas Rogers. Carl Salame. Jimmy Schuster. Bhavya Shah. Sami Chen. Lena Shi. Ariel Slama. Elizabeth Thorin. Jack Smith. Jess Tran. William Tribble. David Sui Chang. Z Wan. Jeffrey Young. Edward Brian Yuan. Cecilia Zana. Evan Jean. Sienna Jean. Tiffany Jean. Sally Nijit. Rachel Shapiro. Nicholas Alduinueva Hauser. Ahab Al-Nimri. Rebecca Arsenault. Catherine O'Hora Banner. Laurentius Barber. John Borcher. Alexandria Brown. Bridget Carmody. Sarah Carr. Bebav Shohan. Arturo Chavez Guerre. Laura Yunjung Chao. Juan Cristanillo. Juan Pablo Delgado Ardila. Brannon Dixon. Thomas Fawcett. Michael Ross Feldman. Ariel Flynn. Brian Jerevitz. Isha Goyab. Nathan Guzman. Tanner Hale. Miara Handler. Amanda Hodak. Olivia Hua. Ruhi Jain. Darsh Jalan. Saloni Cabra. Drake Kirshner. Andy Cole. Tithipong Lafon Gapanish. Nawa Lerturon Vibor. Gwen Lee. Mahika Magun. George Mao. Kiera Mercier Solodar. Elise Odell. Juan Virgilio Nathaniel Mercado Pineda. Nicole Quinn. Rikarina Rabinovitz. John Ragno. Rosie Rust. Ruidi Liu. Evan Schultz. Samuel Arjun Sen. Michal Shapira. Jialing Shi. Narelle Shen. Keenan Sudhira. Yumika Takeshita. Felix Chun Yan Tan. Simon Tenden. Ian Taylor. Riley Thomas. Weston Turner. Andrew Basse Udofa. Kanil Van Nordstrand. Aaron Varner. Alex Verwilt. Patrick Wang. Sean Ward. Tennessee Watt. Tyler Williams. Michael Woods. Laura Zhang. Wilson Zhang. Kevin Zheng. Rebecca Zheng.
Christian Hobbs. Kelly Chang. Rakan Abanaj. Apurva Agarwal. Ramya Ajarapu. Vyam Aurora. Kojo Atta. Thomas Berkman. Andrew J. Bilden. Simon Chen. William Chisholm. Roya Dadgar. Ryan Debner. Alicia Escobar. Daniel Ferreira. Alexander Fumarelli. Phil Garbarini. Vivian Garth. Johnny George. Javier Gararti. Nicholas Hahalis, Julia Hahn, Nelike Haying, Pedro Kenzo Chukimura, Rhea Kairos, Rohan Kansara, Emily Lowry, Anissa J. Lee, Bianca Lee, Joanne Lee, Pamela Lien, Matthew Robert Levers, Ryan Lynch, Saup Mamzamdar, Amanda Ma, Ashna Mago, Kangwak Mai, Frederick Ward Marsh, Maya Menon, Brent Natchison, Joseph Ng, Cam Powell, Shloka Parvathro, Griselda Pereira, AJ Reddy, Daniela Rodriguez, Ryan Sabah, Gabrielle Marie Sirazi, Bradley Smith, Tally Snow, Dan Sobolewski, Pranay Srivastava, Meredith Sway, Sunny Sun, Vaishnavi Tyagi, Alisa Marie Pacheco Uy, Varun Varshney, Amelia Von Appen Terre, Shirley Wong, Aiden Warren, Fangling Wu, Lillian Wu, Heon Yang, Ariella Zebedee, Samantha Zemser, Yiting Zhang, Sarah Vigna, Matthew Zubrow, Onyunye Chukwuka Auzama, Alicia Akasho, Rashna Bauhadin, Jake Becker, Vaishnavi Bangay, Chase Binkley, Max Carlin, Kyle Carosa, Vedika Chada, Alicia Davis, Andrea Delgado, Lavinia Dawn, Natalie Dopstadt, Patrick Dorsey, Charlotte Donatella Emery, Joey Henry Epstein, Alberto Falcone. Joshua Falarin. Saloni Gopani. Yuval Halevi. Mike Holtz. Addison Jakubowicz. Shivika Khanna. Pradeepa Krish. Echo Lee. Tori Lineweaver. Shalene Alexander Leo. Yutong Leo. Spencer Louis. Harry Liu. Nandi Mehta. Tara Muehlschlegel. Devin Cross Murphy. Gina Eugene Na. Johnny Naylor. Paul Nebris. Ian Palau. Ross Perkins. Cindy Chi. J.D. Ratchford. Veronica Rivera. Duncan James Benson Robertson. Cole Rosenberg. William Lawrence Russ. Colin Russell. Chad Schwam. Caroline Sheehan. Amandeep Singh. Ji-Ying Hui, Hans Christian Sitars. Ji-Ying Hui Song. Ken Steyer. Abigail Stumpf. Lily Shugru. Chris Surupanai. Isaac Thielen. Rachel Trefimo. Theodore Samuel Pritzker Vlock. Peter Vospikian. Aditi Wadwa. Bainini Wang. Rishara Wikarakun. Karen Whistler. Kathy Yee. Omer Yaeri. Carly Mambuka. Stephen Adelberg. Kofi Ajari Kwabi. Hyun-Sun An. Kola Alawahi. Steve Berkowitz. Siddharth Bose. Alexander Bird. Annabelle Camp. Debbie Hongyi Cheng. Sydney Rose Chong. Vignesh Chakalingam. Andrew Chow. Anna Chulak. Inbar Cohen. Analia Cuevas Ferreras. Jacob Cutler. Jade Dang. Jason Dotzel. Matthew Eisenstein. Christopher Esposito. Christina Fu. Amelie Ha. Joshua Ha. Alexandra Hellman. Amy Higuchi. Allison Denise Holmes. Alexa Nicole Heater. Christian Junowitz. Kamal Kadiri. Nimi Kimchi. Olivia Les Cornyn. Charlie Kelly. Johan Amanda Lee. Calvin Lee. Harrison Lane. Ben Litton. Chithra Mamalan. Sarah Mondi. Claire Elaine Mendelson. Maithriye Menon. Paul Mavis. Namida Mohammed. Raze Mohammed. Olivia Stokes Mork. Anthony Murad. Carolina Nakamura Chapuis. Kelsey Ann Page. Angela Pan. Minesh Patel. Makadra Patiri. Vijay Ramanujan. Roy Samuel Rennard. Muzamil Samimi. Bradley Shanker. Harshwardhan Singh. Shaila Singh. Grace Stillwell. Wesley Marcel Suggs. Elizabeth May Summers. Armand Tabasi. Patricia Tang. Fahim Tapia. Lexi Thorson. Joshua Urquiago. Eric Wang.
Joel Johnson. Michelle Ryan. Namia Agarwal. Wilfred Joseph Ahua. Miriam Aram. Lucas de Carvalho. Hélène Asmeron. Jacob Chapa. Noah Cho. Gaurav Singh Chaudhary. Serena Xiang. Dania Cortez Cervantes. Colin Duffy. Annie Everett. Kate Gary. Sarah Albright Gerbach. Sarah Healy. Emeline Hervier. Benjamin Hudson. Caitlin Wang. Tiger Wang. Alexander Ishin. David Jojalava. James Jurist. Akshit Kalra. James Kirkland. Hiroki Kobayashi. Pranav Kodali. Owen Ohun Kwan. Simran Lala. Matthew Miller. Sakansh Mittal. Arjun Mohan. Thomas Jae-young Jung. Winnie Mayat. Benjamin Newman. Carmania Oberon. Gracie Osavsky. Rowan Parpali. Anne Park. Chris Park. Julia Hay. Rachel Prokupek. Jasper Prouveau. Nikhil Rashesh. Ishwarya Ramesh Kumar. Divya Ravinder. Jonathan Lencius Rich. Rebecca Rothbarth. Samantha Schneid. Kritika Sakar. Reedy Shah. Mahidar Shapali. Daksha Sharma. Tema Shangwi. Kukua Tendo. Alima Ineza Travali. Shiv Louis Van de Ven. Greg Vanderhorst. Victoria Velho. Ben Wong. Camila Wong. Abigail Wax. Brandon Raymond Wong. Kenya Wright. Norman Jiang. Eva Zhang. Anna Zhao Kim. Madison Cook. Will Abel. Kanupriya Agarwal. Amir Alamedin. Deborah Ati. Nayo Ayekbajeje. Rose B. Ari Bradway. Tom Buluku. Nicolas Selasco. King Feng Chai. Srilata Shala. Cameron Clark. Carter Cortazzi. Nolan Crawford. Bar Aronson. Christian Dostos. Roa El Tohami. Rami Elzabeh. Luisa Esteves. Gaurav Jadao. Arjun Gar. Keshav Goel. Gorish Gualani. Trevor Egingson. Madeleine Hug. Gaurav Jadao. Chris Johnson. Jillian Jones. Matthew Jones. Chris Kellogg Peeler. Sumer Khanna. Mitchell Koganski. Sadvika Kumar. Raphael Labra Ottinger. Emmanuel Lee. James Lin. Jack Lydon. Morgan Mason. Brendan McKee. Kathleen Malak. Anna Marie Manning. David McDaniel. Tiasha Mitra. Brennan Novak. Feyisikemi Olumide Fusika. Christina Parili Lozada. Brooke Perisho. Perry Puig Gonzalez. Elizabeth Ra. Eliana Salmon. Tyron Scaff. Jiru Shi. Khagya Singh. Amy Song. Lee Paige Steinberg. Akash Subramanian. Matthew Orlandi. Krithika Pakyar. Julia Telzak. Kavya Meru Tewari. Grant Erkin. Nithya Wahi. Kevin Eric Wessel. Angelina Zhu. Jimmy Zhang. Carolyn Zhu. Selena Zhu. Katarina Espenschfeld. Natalia Acero Botero. Stephen Antonson. Ryan Ayers. Julie Barger. Minakshi Anand Bhatia. Olamide Olamiju Bola. Aaron Brousseau. Joe Chang. Jerry Shine. Erika Shu. Gaël Conil. Kimberly Darsh. Samuel Cannon Epley. Rachel Furash. Paula Fusaro Assis. Rasil Gul. Victor Gomez Ferreira. Amy Guan. Catherine Yutong Guo. Tarushi Gupta Desai. Ryan Andrew Hager. Sydney Wang. Inaya Jessica Johnson. Mark Kazan. Carl Kalaif. Mark Kim. Stacy Dassault Kim. Josh Klein. Laura Kunstler Brooks. Michael Lee. Quentin Delmart Lassiter Jr. Kevin Kyugmin Lee. Charles Lee. Xiang Li. Andrew Liu. Frank Love. Somia Malhotra. Thiago Gomez. Akash Ajay Mitha. Koyewon Mendy. Candace Nangle. Kaden Nielsen. Riley Nolan. Henry Park. Richard Hay. Katerina Ragnoli. Morgan Ramsey. Marshall Rankin. Vineet Ravi. Josh Rosen. Lyndon San. Reddy Sampat. Vasundhara Singh. Michael Short. Emma Smith. Olivia Sondler. Jordan Spector. Billy Titelbaum. Rihan Vij. Tyler Say. Tanner Wakefield. George Walker V. Bernard Whitchen. Minji Wu. And last but not least, Eric Zhang. Whoa. Congratulations, class of 2026.
And now, to formally welcome you into the Wharton alumni family, it is my pleasure to introduce a leader whose career and commitment exemplify the strength and spirit of that network. David Jones is a Wharton MBA alumnus and a Penn parent. A truly dedicated figure in the Wharton community, David has served on the school's graduate executive board and is a long-standing supporter of opportunity and access for both MBA and undergraduate students. An accomplished leader in investment banking and financial services, David is the co-founder, president, and CEO of Castle Oak Securities. A further testament to his impact, David was honored by receiving the Whitney M. Young Jr. Memorial Conference Alumni Award from the Wharton African American MBA Association. We are grateful for his leadership and delighted for him to welcome you to the alumni community as our alumni marshal today.
Thank you. Dean James. Yes. It's a true honor to stand before you today and welcome the Wharton MBA Class of 2026 into the most powerful, enduring alumni communities in the world. Congratulations to each and every one of you. Now, I was in your shoes 33 years ago, and I can tell you that today marks far more than a completion of a degree. It marks the beginning of the next chapter as members of the Wharton alumni family. A global network that is more than 100,000 strong, spanning industries, generations, and more than 150 countries worldwide. And what makes Wharton special is not just the education you received here, it is the community you now are become a permanent part of. This alumni network will open doors for you, challenge you to think bigger, support you during difficult moments, and celebrate your successes for years to come. It's a community built on engagement, generosity, and mentorship, and the willingness of alumni to lift one another up. As you move forward in your careers and lives, I encourage you to stay connected to Wharton and to each other. The strength of this institution comes from graduates who continue to give back with their time, with their wisdom, with their leadership, and their support for future generations. Today is a moment to recognize the family members, the partners, the friends, the mentors, and the loved ones who helped you reach these milestones. Your success is shared with everyone who believed in you and supported you along this journey. And now, to officially signify your entry into this extraordinary alumni community, I ask you to please move your tassels from the right side of your cap to the left. Welcome to the Wharton alumni community, and congratulations again. We're proud of you and excited to see what comes next. So one of the many things that makes the Wharton community so special is the tradition of giving back and investing in the future of the school. Many of you have already strengthened your bond with Wharton by participating in the class gift campaign. Thank you for playing such an important role helping shape the future of this institution and the experiences of students who follow in your footsteps. I also want to recognize and thank this year's Alumni Fellows, including co-chairs Satvik Bansal and Shruti Manglik, for their outstanding leadership and tireless efforts to make this campaign such a success. Their dedication is a wonderful example of the spirit and the service of this community that defines Wharton. Together, the class of 26 raised $39,989.58 for Wharton. What an incredible achievement and a powerful reflection of what this class can accomplish collectively. Congratulations and thank you again for your generosity and commitment. Now, each year, the alumni flag is passed from an alumni marshal to a member of the graduating class as a symbol of continuity, connection, and a lifelong bond shared by Wharton graduates across generations. I'm especially honored to serve in that role this year. At this time, I'm proud to pass the alumni flag to your classmate and WGA President, Onolapo Undunjo. Please join me in celebrating this meaningful moment as the class of 2026 officially takes its place within the Wharton alumni community.
All right, thank you, David and Analopo. And thank you to all of our 100,000 plus alumni around the globe who make Wharton's community the largest, most impactful, and most engaging business school alumni community in the world. You are now not only a part of the Wharton's alumni community, but you are also a part of the Penn alumni community, where you will continue to grow and nurture the personal, intellectual, and professional relationships you've made during your time here at Penn. And I look forward to seeing all that you do for the University of Pennsylvania and at the University of Pennsylvania commencement ceremony on Monday. So as we close out today's ceremony, it remains my hope that each and every one who graduates today understands how much this community is proud of you and excited for you. May your Wharton experience serve you well in your future endeavors, and may you always trust in the power of Wharton and yourselves. And now, for the moment you've all been waiting for, audience, grab the cameras, graduates, grab your hats on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, congratulations!